welcome to another ASFP Sparking Interest podcast as we rocket through the first quarter of 2025. Today we have Chris Greenhough, who is a fire safety manager from Skanska, who are a significant principal contractor. And also Chris's role and in terms of his work with PFKG, Passive Fire Knowledge Group, and his advocacy and contribution to PFKG. We're going to talk about competency today. Competency, there's a word. For those of you who are quite keen-eyed or keen-eared, the one overbearing thing that I've noticed in the last 12 months is the word training has been replaced with the word competency. The two go hand in hand, of course. It's interesting to try and understand actually how competent people are in the ability to be able to navigate competency or even talk about it. Somebody that probably is relatively well versed in the world of competency is Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
Welcome to this corner of Coventry. And it is a corner. Everybody comes in our little room here and they say, I thought it was much bigger.
Yes.
But it is literally a corner, isn't it?
I would agree. Yeah.
Indeed. The camera never lies, but very good lenses do. So in terms of the subject matter of competency, at the moment, we're trying to create what competency looks like in all facets across design, construction, occupation. And recently, the Industry Competence Steering Group under the Health and Safety Exec and set up by Building Safety Regulator has created a series of groups to define and create what competency looks like. And ASFP is involved in the one for passive, surprise, surprise, because apparently we know and our members know quite a bit about it as a subject matter. But of course, the subject's much broader than that. And defining competency is quite a tricky thing to do. How do you define it, and what do you think it truly means in the industry as a whole, but probably to the same level of interest, what it means to the world of the principal contractor? Because to most people, the world of the principal contractor is a place they rarely venture. What are your thoughts?
I think what I'd like to do is, with the principal contractor, what are we trying to achieve? What do we want to deliver? So we've got a client. We want to deliver a safe and quality building that's functional. So how do we do that? We comply with building regulations. So then defining competence. So we've got our measure of building regulations. So now we have our organisational framework. So we have a process of how we deliver to building regulations. And within that process, we will have roles and tasks. And those roles and tasks we want to define. And to define that, we need competent people. So what's the end product? How do we get there? And it comes down to the competency of the people that we use and the organisations that we use. So if we're looking at competency, how are we going to define that? Skills, knowledge, experience, behaviours. And they're not my words. That's coming straight out of BSI.
It does come from BSI, and I think it's been used as the sort of datum for a lot of this.
And it's good. And there we are. To a lot of what we talk about in this discussion, I'd go back to standards, because then we can be consistent. So I often refer back when giving advice. I often refer back to regulation standards, because then I know I can be consistent in that message.
Yeah, and I think that the challenge has been, because of course there's been training around for years.
Yeah.
But of course, whoever created the training must have come up with the thought of what competent looked like based on the contents of the training. But of course, that globally has never been defined and written down.
Yeah, I think on that we've got to be careful as an organisation as well of defining competence. I've come from I studied construction management as a degree, and then I went into the field as a setting out engineer, and then into site management and project management. And I started off my career with a lot of technical training, but then after 7-8 years, I almost took my own path, and I was doing training on negotiation, program, environment, safety, which are all great things. I went away from the technical competence, and I think that was a mistake. And that's where I think we get some of our issues
You ended up in people tend to follow a slightly more holistic path rather than a sort of formally structure, because you can go to a certain point. You go to school, you do GCSEs, you go to stay at sixth form or college and do A levels, and then you might go to university and do a degree, and then you might stay and then do a postgraduate, a doctorate in something. And there's a clearly defined path in subject matter or profession. So professions, dentistry, being a doctor, being an architect, actually. If you want to, I think the three longest university courses is dentistry, veterinary surgery, being a vet, or being an architect. I think they're all still about 7 years. And you can follow that. But once you fall outside of that, it then starts to become a bit more woolly.
Yeah, I think we really need to focus on what defines competence, which, coming back to what you were saying with the ICSG?
Industry Competence Steering Group. And we're sorry, everybody, for another acronym.
But that's brilliant. What they are doing, and looking at what they're doing, that's going to be huge. If we can define those, then as a principal contractor, we will use that to then bring into our process. And then again, we can be consistent, and we're talking in the same language to all the people that we employ, because we need to employ competent people. How are we going to do that? We're going to use people that are externally measured. So talk about UCAS third-party accreditation. I love that, because I know I've got a level of quality assurance. We've still got to do our principal contractor bit, but the more external measures and the more consistency, the easier it is for us to have competent people, and the less gaps that we will find.
So third-party certification is an interesting thing, because there's various views on third-party certification. For instance, you can't be a full ASFP member unless within certain member categories, manufacturers and specialist subcontractors predominantly. You can't be a member unless you're third-party certified. And I think what we've realised is and that's been a rule for quite a number of years here, but what we've realised is, as things have evolved, is that being third-party certified is not a panacea to the cure of all ills. And therefore, as things are evolving, the competency element is going to come into it. But more importantly, the evidencing of the individual and the organisational competency, which would then fall under part of the measure of their third-party certification. The view of third-party certification, it rarely sits in the middle. It's polarised. Mm-hmm. Some people say it's not, and I quote, "it's not worth the paper it's written on." Others say it's the best thing in the absence of nothing else.
But I'm in that camp.
My question is what was your view of third-party certification?
Third-party certification is great in my eyes. What I need to do as an individual, because I'm only 2 years into the fire sector, if you like. I need to increase my knowledge of the third-party providers and understand what they do in terms of their audit. I've got a pretty good idea, and I've started those conversations. But what level of quality assurance that gives me, because, say, it's not a panacea.
It's a good start.
It's a really good start, because what we've got is an organisation coming in saying, we are going to deliver to this standard. We're going to deliver it. If it's non-compliant, we're going to tell you, and afterwards we're going to give you a certificate to say, we've done it to that standard, your project conforms to it. And that's huge. If we didn't have that, how demonstrate to me how those fire doors are to building regulations. I've got a certificate of conformity, and because I've used that UCAS third-party accredited organisation, I know they've got the management system to evidence all the information. So I've got a lovely pack of information which is consistent, and I can then badge that up in my fire safety manual, and that will be part of my fire safety information to then demonstrate compliance. So third party is it's
products
huge.
And services.
Products and services.
So installers. So I mean,
I find products harder.
Yeah. It's a more diverse. It's a far more, the depth and breadth of products is clearly significantly greater than installing. Do you think the scheme should be more robust? Have you come across schemes where you think the scheme isn't robust enough? The third-party scheme.
I'm not there yet.
You're not there yet.
I've got questions about how to compare some schemes. Fire door maintenance is an example. What is allowed, what isn't allowed. Sometimes you're relying on a supervisor to then look after a number of other supervisors and signing off that work. Makes me nervous.
Yeah.
But again, what we do as the principal contractor, we've got knowledge of the third-party schemes. We can say, can you demonstrate to us what you're going to do, what you're going to give us, and how we do that is, can you give us an inspection test plan? Because that's a roadmap to compliance. And then some of those check sheets within your inspection test plan, can we see some of those to make sure that we've got the right examples? And then we can start building up our benchmark, so we're in tune with what they give us. But yeah, there's different ways around it, but ultimately it's quality assurance to a level.
Yeah.
Coupled with what we do, I think we can deliver quality at the end.
And I think where the direction of travel is going in terms of the competency frameworks that are coming out of the different sector lead groups. So passive fire protection is SLG 12.
Yeah.
Chris, sector lead group 12. 10 is doors, I think, or it's installation of doors. 12 is passive in total. 10, I think, is installation stuff, including doors.
Yes, 10 is
has
broken.
Got a series of subgroups.
Yes. Yeah. Which passive is? Well, does it come into some of those?
The problem with passive fire protection, or I'd say the problem, it's probably the wrong word. The challenge with passive fire protection, as you know, is it cuts through everybody else.
Yep.
So it cuts through the partitioning in terms of penetrations. It cuts through building services, M&E stuff. It cuts through pretty much everybody, and it forms everybody. So whether it's protecting, penetrations, or it's creating partitions, whether they're fixed or operable, whether they're vertical or horizontal, whether it's protecting openings in ductwork by virtue of fire-rated dampers, passive pretty much cuts through everybody else.
Yeah.
Including active systems. So, active systems create penetrations that passive fire systems have to resolve. So we will be sort of that group, the 12 will be sort of rubbing up alongside other groups by virtue of that statement.
Yes, we had similar within our business, within building. We have quality champions, or someone you can talk to.
Yes.
For whether it's doors, cladding, not necessarily fire. And I'm one of the leads for passive fire.
Yeah.
And I think at the start there was a bit of confusion. That's fire stopping. And they said, what do you want me to do? Oh, yeah, look at the fire stopping. I said, it's much more than that, the fire stopping. So I need to talk to the person doing the doors,
Indeed,
the
because it's
curtains,
all connected.
the partitions. Yeah. So
It's all connected.
exactly.
So the direction of travel, though, is it's going with. We believe that the evidencing of individual employee competency and the evidencing of the organisational's competency structure, so effectively a sort of ISO 9001 version of how that organisation manages its systems in terms of competency, will have to form part of the third-party certification schemes and will have to be audited by the third-party certifier.
Yeah,
because without it, you're then only talking. You're talking about a product, or you're talking about a service, as in installing something. But how can you have an installation scheme that doesn't capture the competency of the people that are doing that work for and on behalf of the organisation that bears the certificate? And I think that's going to be the challenge. And from your point of view, I mean, people quite often sort of, the principal contractor is the bogeyman. Everything's their fault.
Yes.
The contractual chain downwards to specialist subcontractors and so on and so on. There's always been that sort of Tom and Jerry relationship, and going up to the architect, there's been a similar relationship of design responsibility and everything else. And part of, because the other phrase I was going to bring up later on in this is that people bandy around competency, but the other one is culture change.
Yes.
Which is a killer, really, in the sense that if you can't define what culture change looks like, why is it being presented? I mean, it's easy to say, well, we need culture change. Go on then.
Yeah.
So how does that look from your point of view, where does competency support the principal contractor? Because the reality is the spread of responsibility is not with only one organisation of the design and construction chain. There's a level of shared responsibility. So what would help the main contractor in the world of competency, either from a sort of PQQ evidencing point of view, or from latterly from a sort of golden thread handing over and evidencing the quality of what's being occupied?
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to directly answer this question.
That's okay.
But
we have good lawyers.
What would really help is designing the building before we start building it.
So the gateways.
It doesn't necessarily have to be the gateways.
Yeah.
We can the gateways are great, but taking the gateways, but the gateways aren't introduced on all buildings. But we can form our own gateways. And you said about culture. It's behaviours, isn't it?
Culture is behaviours.
Yeah.
So that, to a large degree.
So let's design before we start building. I'd go heavy on that, because if we're allowing design to rattle on into the construction phase, and we've started building, that's poor behaviour, isn't it?
Well, it's designing as you're building.
If we're competent, if we're a competent designer, we shouldn't allow the building work to continue. And as a competent principal contractor, we are going to say, we can't build that. It's not sufficiently designed. And we're going to challenge that design, which makes us really unpopular if you get into the first few weeks of a PCSA agreement and then you challenge the design and you think, why have we employed Skanska? They're picking the design apart. But that we're not. We're just challenging the design because we need to demonstrate it. So let's demonstrate compliant design now, because as part of our duties and those new duty holder roles in building regulations say that if we're going to build it, it needs to be built to the design. If we're going to design it, if we build it to that design, it's going to comply with building regulations. And if we haven't finished the design, we're at risk, aren't we?
Yes.
We're guessing.
Which historically, because I know, part of the reason that the Passive Fire Knowledge Group sort of came into being was in recognition of the sort of scenario that you've just painted there, where there's been a legacy, historical design as you build and it's then being picked up later on, and it needs to be rectified. Which I have to say, and I say this at any opportunity that anybody gives me, so I'm going to do it now. I think the PFKG, in terms of its recognising that there's things to be resolved from a principal contractor point of view, and how that gets resolved through the design, either what you've just mentioned in terms of the relationship between principal designer and principal contractor, or how that cascades down into specialist subbies. I think you talk about culture change. I think if somebody said to me, give me an example of what culture change looks like post 2017, I think the PFKG is a very, very good example of what culture change looks like. It's recognition of a problem, and the ability and the wanting to then put things right or do things differently.
Yeah.
And there has to be an element of understanding what the problem is in the first place. So this goes back to the idea that this thing about what does actually competency look like. So, I mean, I sort of asked you the first question, what does competency truly mean in our industry? And I still think as an industry, we sort of struggle to answer that, because I actually don't think the definitions have been clearly defined as to what competency looks like. So
but they change, don't they? Depending on, and that's why I say you need to define the role, you need to define the task, and then you can go and say this is what.
And that's what the sector lead groups are doing, because actually,
which is great.
We're not saying that. So my title is managing director. What does that mean? Well, if you were at the build-up day of London Build, you would have seen me with a mop on a pole cleaning the ASFP truck that was now parked inside Olympia. Is that the MD's job? Don't know. I was the only one there. You're a fire safety manager, but that could encapsulate all sorts of different tasks and duties. So you can't define competency through a title or position. It has to be through the roles, the actions, or the sort of the works that person does. So I'm a fire stopper. What do you do? Well, I do penetration seals. I do X, Y, and Z. Then, therefore, once we've identified the operations that individual does, we can then create defining what competency looks like in that particular operation. You can't do it the other way. It's impossible.
Yes. And what's important, or what I'd like as a principal contractor, is how that's measured and then certified. Because you can define...
evidenced.
Yes, because you can define it. Brilliant. But how do I know that you've fulfilled that definition? It'd be great if you could stamp that.
The idea of the framework, so there's sort of three elements to this, if people don't sort of know about it, is that there's a publicly available framework you go into, and you put in there what you do as a function. So I'm a fire stopper. And it then tells you the learning that you need to do. So it could be a couple of online courses, it could be watching half a dozen different CPDs by different providers, some of those probably the manufacturers of the products you install. Some things at slightly higher level means that you might need to do a course and sit an exam and pass the exam. And you go and do those things, and then you have to upload into a framework, because you've now registered yourself into a framework. You upload the evidence of that. And then normally once, twice a year, depending on who looks at it, the organisation you work for would be audited on the evidenced competency of the individuals who work for them, in line with effectively the role they do.
Yep.
We from a member organisation would probably look at it from the point of view of member renewal, because the renewal requirements will start to dial in, requiring to evidence competency of the employees that work for that company.
So would the assessment be by the UCAS third party accredited? You'd see them as the...
It has to plug into part of the third party certification.
Perfect.
Because then, see, I went back, so that the PQQ bundle.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I have probably, metaphorically speaking, you and I sat at different ends of the table in the porter cabin. I was the specialist subbie, you're the principal contractor,
Yeah.
and you would turn up with your 3 ring binders of pre-qualification questionnaires.
Yeah.
I would turn up with my wheelbarrow of evidential documentation to show that I'm a good manufacturer and a good installer, and I have all of the things that you need. Of course, part of this is actually trying to dial down the audit trail
Yes.
and the paperwork trail so that you can say, well, we would only procure companies, products or services if on this basis. And if that is that they're third-party certified as installers or manufacturers, but actually within that third-party certification is a whole criteria of things they need to meet, including evidenced competency.
Yeah.
Surely that takes the PQQ burden further down and gives you, the principal contractor, a better guarantee.
We've cracked it then. It's done.
It's easy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Are we done?
I think so.
So
just get on with it.
Problem is, it's easy for people like me to say that.
Yes.
But of course, the reality is to it's the old, rocket science, rocket engineering, rocket science. We wanted to send 3 people to the moon and bring them back again.
Yeah.
If you remember the famous speech by that President Kennedy. But of course, the challenge then has to get passed on to the rocket engineers.
Yeah.
Which is, you have to build a rocket big enough and it has to work and not blow up, and it needs to get there and get back and land in the ocean and all the rest of it. And that is a much bigger task.
Yeah. So what you've said's brilliant, because I've now got the confidence that our business process is in line with what you've just explained, and that's what we're going to do. So we're on the right path.
Yeah.
Brilliant. The application, and for 2025, I'm going out and visiting more projects, and then you see the reality, and you go into the project progress meeting, and that reality of the program, the cost, the margins, the fees for being delayed. So you start to hear, we must hit this date. Yeah, we've got to do it safely and with quality. Okay, but we need to talk about that more. But they're the pressures. I think they are two of the big pressures.
There's and I'm married to a Yorkshire woman, so I'm allowed to do this. There's time and there's money. So that unfortunately, that is still a measure, isn't it?
Yes. And we can do time and money if we concentrate right at the front end, nail that design. You will do it in the time and for the money. If not, you'll better it, I think.
So I'm going to come back to SCEB in a minute, because I want to pick up on that for a second. But in terms of the gateways, Gateway 1 is slightly more, we know where that sits. And Gateway 2, Gateway 3. Gateway 2 means that you can't construct until the design has been effectively signed off.
For high-risk buildings.
Yeah, for herbs. Yeah, yes. High-rise, high-risk buildings, yes. We're hearing and seeing a lot of noise about it. Gateway 2, we've seen sort of letters saying it should be diluted. We've seen stuff on social media saying it should be got rid of and we should go back to the old way, which of course is design while you build, and we know that doesn't work. But the reality of it at the moment is clearly people are struggling to get these applications through and get them passed, and the knock-on effect to that is it's slowing up cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
It's slowing up cash flow through the design and construction chain. So the subbies get hit first, then the principals will start to see a slowdown, the architects will start to see a slowdown in mission works. What's your view of the gateways, assuming that from a quality point of view, it's you see it as a plus, but as an operational thing at the moment, ASFP has already put its hands up and said we'll support the transition, as in we'll help people get work out what good or bad looks like in terms of the applications.
Yeah.
What's Skanska? What's your view of it as a process?
It's good.
Yeah,
it's good. It's unfortunately we go to that cultural change, and it's forcing that cultural change, and I'd like to think we get better at Gateway 2.
Yeah,
and then we'll start applying that that change in culture, and then we'll start developing all buildings like the way that we're doing for Gateway 2. So I appreciate it's difficult, but it's needed.
Yeah.
Because if we carry on like we did before, we're not going to deliver quality.
No, and I think you're right. Culture change is always. No one likes change. No one likes the C word. It's never. People will fight against it. Things are launched, and sometimes maybe they're not geared. They're not scaled to deal with the demand. And I'm sure most people won't admit their mistakes, but they're probably, maybe they could have got the system set up a bit more slickly before they opened the floodgates, so to speak.
Yeah, I think we've got to appreciate the amount of change in regulation and the legislation. And I've done a lot of reading, and I think it's remarkable the amount that has been published and the amount that it does work. Okay, there's some hiccups, but you need to test it to see see where it fails.
Well, it's evolution, not revolution.
Yeah,
and it will evolve into a place where in a few years' time, everyone will have forgotten what the fuss was about, and everyone sort of gets on with just doing it. And there'll be people that have upskilled themselves into making applications well, and they go through. But I think it will drive change in terms of how buildings are. If the change is how you get an application through, then that has to flush back up to how you've designed it in the first place.
Yeah.
And how you've evidenced the design and the compliance of that design. Okay, so just going back to SCEB, skills, knowledge, experience, behaviour. It's an interesting one because skills drive behaviours, knowledge drives behaviours, experience drives behaviours. So you've got three key drivers sat in front of behaviour. Some would say that the E equals B, experience equals behaviours, is the worst scenario, because somebody says, well, of course I know what I'm doing. I've been doing that for 20 years.
Yes.
Until somebody points out they've been doing it wrong for 20 years. Yeah. Skills and knowledge are two different things. Skills is practical, one would assume.
Yeah.
Knowledge is more, textbook.
Yep.
Where do you see the higher? In the levels of importance? Where would you see, from skills, knowledge, and experience driving behaviours, of the three? which do you think of the from the point of view of you procuring products and services? Which of the three do you see as most important?
Can I have all of them?
Yes, but I just thought it'd be interesting to put them into an ascending or descending order.
I'm not sure. Maybe we'll get there when
you don't come here for easy questions, Chris.
That's all. Talk it through. but cool. Right. An example, perhaps a fire door. Love a fire door.
Yeah.
So you could have a highly skilled carpenter to hang a fire door.
Yeah.
And it would functionally, not functionally, it would open and close, and it'd be true and plumb.
Yeah.
And it'd be cracking door. But if they don't have the knowledge of maybe the ironmongery or the gaps between the frame and the wall,
smoke seals,
vision
panels,
you have a cracking door, but without that knowledge of fire, it's useless.
Yeah.
So you can have highly skilled people, but without the knowledge, then the door doesn't function as it's supposed to.
So skills can be learned and evidenced.
I guess what am I saying now? I'm saying that the knowledge is sitting higher in that example, but then if you've got all the knowledge, say I've got all the knowledge and you ask me to put a fire door in, I'll probably get there in the end, but it'll probably take me a week. Fall out after. I think you need a balance.
Supposed to read the instructions, aren't you? Are you one of these people that throws away the instructions when you list of drawers from IKEA?
Not anymore. I guess that's experience, right?
Indeed, yeah.
So I don't know if I can put them in a hierarchy at the moment.
Should it be knowledge, skills, experience? Because knowledge drives skills. Skills develops experience. experience drives behaviours.
Does experience drive behaviours?
Well, not knowledge.
Well, yes, it does. Whether they're good or bad behaviours.
And that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's an awful lot of bad behaviour to flush out.
Yeah. And when we say bad behaviour, not that people are doing it, not negligent, they're just awareness.
Maliciously.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not doing it maliciously. I tried to explain that to a police officer that said, I was driving down the A34 one Sunday evening to my previous life before here, and they sort of asked me to kindly just pull over for a moment and have a chat, and I wasn't excessively, but I'll be honest with you, because I did that route week in, week out, it's sort of familiarity. I used to think to myself, if I let go of the steering wheel with the car just driving itself, find its own way to Portsmouth. He said, "Oh, you're going a little bit, just wanted to," and I said, "Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I do this trip so often. I just got used to just driving the way I've always drived." And he said, "Yeah, but the speed limit's 70.
Yeah.
I went, "Yeah, I sort of know that." So I knew it, but I wasn't doing it maliciously.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. I just got into this habit of experience.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yes.
He let me off, by the way.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Ha.
He just pulled me over for a chat. I think there's various levels of importance, but of course the big thing is about behaviours. And I know there's certain sort of there's various sort of dialogue, and we see stuff on LinkedIn where it's all behaviour driven. If you join us, we'll give you a certificate and we'll promise the whole industry that you will never ever do anything bad ever.
Yeah.
But that's a promise nobody can keep, isn't it?
This is where regulation's really good.
Yeah.
This is really helpful, because the regulation is going to drive that behaviour, because you're now responsible.
Yes.
So, client, you're funding the project and you want a quality building in a really short period. Well, you now have responsibilities. So, yes, funding it, but you need to understand that we need competent people, and it's going to take this long, and it's going to cost this much if you want to achieve that quality. And I think the light bulbs coming on for some of these and the duty holders again, which is great, because we can go back. Well, why are we doing it? Well, if you disagree with it, it's part of legislation. You've got to do it, and hopefully that will drive the culture change.
No, all of these things has to be underpinned with a level of legislation. So we're just talking about experience leading to behaviours, and a good friend of the ASFP is the FIS, the Federation of Interior Specialists, and I know Joe Celia, who was heavily involved in PFKG, has recently retired. We love you, Joe, by the way, and we miss you. Ian McKilby is my counterpart there, and Ian and I support each other a lot, and sometimes we disagree with each other.
Yes,
quite often. But they came up with the genius recognition of the responsible no. And in the world of main contractors, we know that you guys would love to sublet just one package to one company because it would cost you less and it lowers the risk of responsibility. And I had some amazing experiences. When I was in my previous life, again, we put a significant amount of curtain systems into the Blavatnik's Institute at Oxford University. And anybody familiar with that building will know it was a complex design. And the value of the curtains in that job was nearly £1 million. And I went to the site and I found out that the fire curtain package was included in the dry lining package, because a fire curtain is a partition and so is dry lining. So I found the porter cabin on the site that I was directed to and it wasn't Skanska that built this, by the way, it was somebody else. And I found these three guys who were covered in sort of grey dust, drinking a cup of tea in the oldest, rustiest porter cabin that was on the site. And I said, "Hello, I'm from," and I said, we're in your package, and fire curtains. And he said, "What's a fire curtain?" I thought, we have a problem here. So we both bimbled up to the main contractor's office and found the project director. And he turned around. I thought, I'll let him do the running. He turned around and said, "Get this guy out of my package and bring him in as a separate." And it goes back to this responsible no, which is know your limitations or what you are competent to do. How are principal contractors going to manage that moving forward based on, and I jokingly said about, limiting the number of sublets you make, and I know there's commercial and sort of, other reasons behind it, but how are you going to manage that? And hats off to FIS for coming up with a responsible no, because I think, we all want to say yes to everything, but we all know our limits. I wouldn't go on gladiators because I know my limits, Chris. So how is competency going to affect how principal contractors sublet works, and how are you going to be able to measure and rationalize that?
We're going to use third-party accredited contractors.
Okay.
So we might be able to sublet the package to one organisation, but they need to demonstrate for each function, fire curtains and dry lining. Yeah, we can let that together. Probably won't find many dry lining or fire curtain companies that can do both. But yeah, we're defining competence by the fire protection system. So demonstrate to us with your third-party UCAS accreditation. That's how we do it. And
more of that emphasis on evidence is going to move towards competency and the evidencing of competency of the employees and the individuals and the organisation.
I guess that's what we would like the accrediting bodies that are doing the assessment to help with that, so we get a level of quality assurance, and define what level of quality assurance we're getting by the accreditation, and what do the principal contractor need to do to monitor that competence. What should we be looking at? We've got our inspection test plan.
Yep.
That's what we use as our roadmap.
Yep.
The contractor will tell us how they're going to comply, with the design, the installation, the record keeping, the certification. Before it starts, we can do our due diligence on that, make sure that we're happy with that, and then we can monitor against that.
Okay. Yeah,
I think that's pretty robust.
Yeah, no, I think it's all about creating a level of robustness that can be that there's a level of confidence about if you are ever challenged or audited on it.
Yeah,
because we were talking before the camera started rolling. Well, they don't really roll anymore. They're just they're just on. Is how the sort of legalities of what we do in construction is that it is all effectively retrospective law. You are tested against code or standards or published, defined, accepted best practice.
Yes,
as to what you've done. And the whole Grenfell inquiry was based on effectively retrospective law. They took document B was the first measure and said, how did you refurb this building against this? Then they probably took another document and something else, and everybody involved was tested against either what they'd evidenced originally or what they should have, what was deemed as best practice or code or standards that they should have been operating to. And if you don't do it against those, and you say it's bespoke, then you have to make sure it's equal or better than what has been. And I remember we had a chat with the guy, is it Danny? He was the fire engineer on the Shard. And the Shard's fire engineering strategy was completely bespoke except the old Section 20 Fire Act.
Right.
But they did it in a way that they could evidence that it was actually more robust than what existed at the time in code and standards and best practice.
Yeah.
So I think people misunderstand how things work, don't they?
Yeah, and I was saying to you that what are we trying to achieve? It's safety, quality, in line with the building regulation, and we shouldn't lose sight of that.
Absolutely.
And sometimes we do, and we delve into the competence and what we're trying to achieve. But let's understand what we're doing, be really clear, and why we're doing it.
Yeah.
And don't lose our way as we filter down to these smaller tasks. We need to recognise the building holistically and how each of those components contribute to the end result.
Yeah. And there's a downside to not developing the sort of competency regime, which is, I think, ultimately it costs more money and creates more reputational damage around the construction industry as a whole, but in certain cases could be, individual organisations. Is that something that, in the world of the principal contractor that the organisations have become more aware of?
How do you mean? I don't know if I understand that question.
So in the sense that probably the most obvious one is the issue with external cladding and
yes,
and how that is being managed, not just from a practical point of view,
okay,
but from a who's responsible, the legalities. We've seen cases of people's mental health being affected by the ongoing issues.
Okay.
And of course, I suppose if the manufacturers of the products, the installers of the products, the people that procured those products and services were more competent,
yes,
would that have mitigated the situation
Yes.
that we now find in the industry?
Yes, it would. Was the framework or the process robust enough? Probably not. But what we need to do, whether it's damaging or not, is we need to be transparent and we need to own up to our mistakes. And then we need to put those processes and procedures in place so it doesn't happen again, which I think is what is going on in the industry. And people are doing a really good job. And it frustrates me when I hear some of the stuff on LinkedIn or some of the chats and people get really frustrated. I'm not seeing enough change.
Yes.
But if you have a look of the amount of working groups and the amount of work going into it, and I get it's frustrating, but it's a mammoth task, and actually if you follow it, there's so much work or has been done, but I can see it's all going in the right direction for me.
The trajectory is going.
I'm positive.
No, I'm positive. I'm positive, and I was listening to Paul Morell of the Morell Day Report.
Yeah.
He was presenting at an event at Lloyd's Library, run by Consort, who is one of the insurance companies that is a member of the ASFP. And he was sort of basically saying that, progress in certain areas is slower than it should be, but ultimately he's sort of more optimistic about it than he was, say, even a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think what people don't realise is the monumental task that's at hand and the amount of change that's happened.
Yeah.
And certainly in the realms of competency, people go, well, you just need to create training and make people do it. But the reality is that first of all, you have to define in all of these roles what competent looks like by operation, as you say.
Yeah.
So when we looked at fire stopping, there was 175 different fire stopping operations that each one of those needed to have a level of things you need to do to be deemed competent based on what the groups had said defined being competent in that particular operation.
Yeah.
Then when we'd done that and looked at it, you then find that actually there isn't an awful lot of training around for you to do that aligns to what competent looks like by definition.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the question of creating what competency looks like. It's more a question of creating the content that you can then do, learn, absorb, and then evidence you've learned and absorbed it to be deemed competent to that particular thing.
Yeah. And that's and that's why as principal contractor, we can't make those assessments of individuals. To employ a load of individuals would be crazy.
Yeah.
We need to rely on...
It has to be organisations.
It has to be organisations because won't have the resource, we won't have the expertise
No.
to do that.
Well, it means you're going to be interviewing people all day, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Monday morning on a building site, there'll be a queue around the block of individual interviews, people with their folders of all their exam papers and bits and bobs. I mean, that's just not practical.
Yes. And the churn of people that you get through the gate on projects as well. We need to share that with all the organisations, all playing their part.
No, you're right. And I think, just going back to, we had a gentleman called Martin in. I can't remember his second name. Sorry, Martin. He was from the RICS, and he's one of the leading voices on the conflict resolution pledge. And it's an interesting thing because, of course, historically, we all sign up to the contract. I used to always go in there with a highlighter pen and highlight LADs, main contractor discounts, retentions, and it was the three chips on the table. I would always try and offset one against the other, or time on site was the fourth one. JCT contracts relatively standard, although quite often they're not, because you sort of see variation, emissions, additions, changes made. Where do you think? I mean, part of competency, if we can improve competency and improve quality and improve standards, does that make schemes like conflict avoidance more relevant, because actually there's less chance of ending up, dare I say it, walking up the courtroom steps?
It's something that I don't get involved in. I'm glad to say. Gary,
do you want to phone the lawyers?
My line manager, Gary,
will be sweating when he watches this.
he deals with anything like that. My role is that it doesn't end up there. So
brilliant. Okay.
Working with
that's a brilliant answer.
Thank you. Working with our procurement department to ask the right questions.
Yeah.
And make sure that these contracts are easily understanding the deal, we call it in Skanska.
Yeah.
What the deal means to you might be different to what I think. And then we start having a scrap about the contract. Well, that it says it here. And we've misinterpreted, or we've interpreted the line in the contract differently. I've had those conversations in my site management days.
Yeah.
So, which is, again, the inspection test plan is a great way to take the elements out of the contract, put it in your inspection test plan. We approve that, and then we know what you're delivering to.
One of the comments I see on LinkedIn a lot is and I quote, all of this. I'm not quite sure what they mean by all of this, but I think what they mean is all of the new things that we have to do, through CCPI, OPSS, HSE, the Building Safety Regulator, competency, of course, third-party certification, all of this. Because bearing in mind, you have to have a slight level of empathy in the sense that there's still people out there trying to run businesses.
Yes. But is it all new?
Well, that's sort of where I was leading to. And the one of the major comments they come out with is, well, this means everything's going to cost more. Where are you with that? I mean, do you and I was probably getting slightly overly animated. But where are you with the idea that it's all going to cost more on the basis that bread, petrol, gas, electricity have skyrocketed, and that's got nothing to do with the construction industry?
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to cost more. I'd like to say it won't cost more, but maybe it will. But what it will do is you will get value if you do it right.
Yeah.
So I guess it will cost what it's going to cost. I don't know if it's necessarily going to cost more. Yeah. And you'd have to run the same project, run it badly and run it well.
Yeah.
And then see what's left at the end. But
if you ran it badly and then drew a line on the bottom line and all occupied the space and everybody moved on to the next job, you would count that. But the problem is you've now got issues of legacy issues.
And that's it. Your project hasn't finished, has it?
Exactly.
Yeah. So when are you ever going to know?
You-
Well, I suppose you write it down.
You would write
talk,
it down.
Talk about write
If you close that job off in financial year 1 and a problem arises in financial year 3,
Yeah.
you're not necessarily going to relate the costs of remedial or whatever it is in year 3 to how that affected the bottom line on that job in year 1, because you've closed the books on year 1.
Yeah, it's a bad way to run a business, and you see it in the media, don't you, of companies with these huge write-downs.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, because what we've done in the last couple of years
Yeah.
has come back to bite us.
And I know some organisations sort of create reserves now in case, and they can carry those reserves through financial years.
I mean, it's not right, is it?
It's not right, but I suppose it's an accountant's way of dealing with it.
But I bet if we start implementing this competence to the structure, the defined roles, I guarantee those write-downs will be smaller and smaller.
Yeah, and of course you have to evidence competency a lot if you're going to be an accountant.
Yeah. These write-downs may get bigger if we continue, because in occupation, I think the buildings are under more spotlight. So in the maintenance stage, it might take 12 months, and the first service and maintenance contractor goes in, who is competent, and then tells you this isn't a compliant design, and then you go back to the principal contractor and say, hey, this building, what are you going to do about it? Then it costs a huge amount to go into a live building.
Yes.
And then the building's unsafe, and then your reputation as a business is...
Well, it's like working airports and hospitals cost 30% more because, of course, hospitals and airports never close.
Yeah.
So you're having to work around, like you say, a live building. In terms of... let's go all the way back through the design and construction. Let's go to the client.
Yes.
Because there's a whole series of debate. So we have, principal designer, principal contractor. We've got the PAS 8000 series on competency, principal designer, principal contractor. But ultimately, from a legal chain, the client bears a significant amount of responsibility.
Yes.
And you occupy a space, bar the architect, bar the principal designer, the principal contractor probably occupies a space the closest to the client. Because, a lot of our members who make things, install things, test things, so they're further removed from the client. Do have clients become more aware of and interested in competency of the people that are going to design and build their buildings?
Yes. But, and again, I don't work so close with clients, but I would say they've become more interested because of regulation, because they are now responsible.
Yeah.
And you have to say, I'm responsible for this. Well, therefore, I'm more interested if I'm saying I'm responsible.
Okay.
I'd better have a closer look.
Yeah.
I think that's what's making them more interested. I don't know. Maybe somebody will correct me on that.
Yes, it's a bit like being the driver or the front seat passenger of a car. You because you're the driver, you are responsible, and therefore you're more interested in what's going on around you, rather than the front seat passenger.
Yeah.
My wife, on the other hand, when she sat in the front seat passenger, is actually more attuned to my driving than probably I am. So yes, I've always so I think it's
it's powerful, isn't it? If you say, someone will tell you that this system is fine and it will work, and you say, can you underwrite that and just sign that to say, that's give me a minute. I just need to go and check. It's amazing. Oh, can you just sign that off for me and make sure that you're responsible?
Yeah.
Okay. No.
No, I can't.
No.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, Chris, but I'm not actually going to sign anything to say that I am. But I think it is. I think we talk about, we've been talking about this. It's not a buzzword, but it's a word that's used a lot more, competency, and this phrase culture change, which is used a lot. I see culture change used a lot, and of course, because now the clients are there's a more robust framework around their responsibility as the client.
Yep.
That must drive culture change, because of course culture change is always top down, isn't it?
I think it can go both ways.
Bottom up.
Both.
The power of the people, then, because I always tend to look at these things from the body politic triangle. And if the client sits at the very top of the pyramid, the triangle, principal designer's probably underneath them, principal contractor. And of course, the further down you go, the more of a population of people are involved. And you could go right to the very bottom and say, well, actually, those are the people that occupy the space.
We're talking about that responsible now, aren't we?
Yeah.
You get a client that's not interested or doesn't want to take that responsibility. If you're going to be a principal designer or a principal contractor, you need to be saying no if you're not getting that support from the top.
And has that changed the relationship between principal contractor and principal designer? Are you having different conversations now?
Yes. The conversation around who's going to be the principal designer, that's a good one.
Okay. And is that like pass the parcel? Does the music stop and you have to take a layer of wrapping paper off?
It seems to be pass the parcel, where I don't think it needs to be pass the parcel.
Yeah.
And that's probably where the contract as a mechanism is maybe confusing it. The role of the principal designer is again really simple. It's really clear for me. You're taking responsible steps to ensure the design is coordinated. So you're asking the designers the right questions to identify the gaps, and then you're seeking that expert competence or advice or to plug those gaps. I don't see why it usually starts with the designer, but I'm seeing this. There wants to be a shift from when the principal contractor gets involved later on, that the PD role wants to be novated. And why? You shouldn't need to, because your principal designer, you want to finish your design.
Yeah.
I don't see why there needs to be.
Well, it's all the way through.
Perhaps this will generate some discussion, and please contact me on LinkedIn and tell me I'm wrong. But
or send it to us and we'll forward it on to Chris for free.
But this is where I'm trying to get more involved. To challenge. I think it should sit with the designer. I might change my mind. I think the principal contractor could do the role, but I think it sits the principal. Why would you not want to do it if you're a designer?
Because there's levels of design, isn't there? There's that walking into a room with your very expensive stainless steel German fountain pen, making a few sweeping moves onto a piece of A2 paper on a flip chart and saying, this is the next office building that's going to be built at Bishopsgate, and everybody applauds you, and you walk out the room.
Therefore, your duty as a designer, you haven't met it, have you, in building regulations?
No, you've met it. You've met your duty as an artist.
Yes.
But not necessarily
as a designer. You haven't designed it.
No.
It needs to be compliant. We need to be able to build it. And I think that's where the principal contractor can help, because we can say we need to sequence it like this.
Yeah.
We've got a supply chain with design knowledge that can help the design, but don't pass the design over. The design doesn't then become the construction phase. The design can overlap, although if you start construction, you're at risk with some of the elements. You need to be.
I have a view that my view is, and I've probably aired this a few times, ad nauseam probably, is I don't think the architectural community and architectural technicians and specialist construction engineers in the realms of structural or fire, for instance, might argue against this. But I don't believe that architects are competent enough in the specialist areas of design.
Yep.
And I'm talking about certainly our world, passive fire. And I know this because my son did architecture at Nottingham, And in his part 1 for the 3 years of being at uni, I asked him to keep an eye on passive coming into the classroom or being talked about. And they basically skim read ADB for half a day.
Yep. So this is a really good discussion, isn't it? So we need to get an architect on the sofa and say, do you think you should know more or be more competent? And they say, we haven't just got part B, we've got all of the regulations.
Whole alphabets, isn't there, Chris?
Nearly. We can't do it. We need support. So then we can go and find the right people to bring into the design stage.
Yeah.
Oh, but that will cost more. Who's going to pay for that?
Goes back to my that previous question.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's all coming back. Then we need to change the culture, don't we? Because we need to get the design mature enough that we can be confident when we build it, it's going to comply. Because
do you still get do you still get designs? And I know a lot of it's now electronic, but let's just entertain me for a moment. Does somebody still roll out a big sheet of paper, and there's all this nice sort of design on it from a plan or elevation point of view, and then there's a space that says passive fire protection here, contractor's choice, and that drawing's come from the principal designer?
Wouldn't come from the principal designer.
Might come from an engineer.
Come from a designer.
Yeah.
But, and this is where, again, correct me if I'm wrong, the principal designer is not necessarily designing, is producing that drawing. The principal designer is coordinating the designers and asking the questions to make sure they comply. So the principal designer in that case, I would hope, has asked enough questions to make sure a drawing doesn't come with
big blank space with something written on it.
With a load of shaded areas saying by others or whatever. What we want is that principal contractor role. So we've got all the correct competent designers that we need. It doesn't just have to be the architect, it can be whoever we need to create that detail. Yeah, the principal designer is going to coordinate that design. We need to make sure that we've got the competence within the design to produce that detail.
So hang on that for a moment, because the competence of the designer.
Just to finish on that, what would be a really good drawing when I see details is if you could point to the detail and then reference where you've got that detail from, because what we do see is details that are a mishmash or a principle of, we've got some fireboarding from this tested detail. We'll do a bit of that detail and a bit of other detail, but we're not going to reference all of that. And then when we get it and challenge it, it doesn't work. It might work in theory, but it doesn't work in terms of evidencing the performance.
But they've taken a part of something out of what was a whole somewhere else, but not directly transferred it across.
We don't know where it's come from.
Yeah.
And when we challenge that detail, it's often too late as well.
So that sort of wanders into the arena of, I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, but it wanders into the world of that's incompetency,
yes.
Isn't it?
Yes.
Or is it just the fact that they are competently incompetent, as in they don't know what they don't know?
That, I think.
Because we talk about this whole thing of, we're asking specialist subcontractor installers to evidence individual and organisational competency. We're asking manufacturers to do the same and more, actually. CCPI, for instance, listing and labelling products in terms of their performance, and OPSS now exists as a sort of policeman of that sort of product regime. But we hear less about actually how and this is it's a metaphorical question. How does an architect evidence that they are competent in the designing in of passive fire protection products and systems? Because at the moment, and I know there is a sector lead group which is looking at design and defining what competency is and saying what learning needs to be done and evidenced. But at the moment, how, metaphorically speaking, how on earth does an architect even start to think, how do I become competent in designing in passive fire systems and products?
Yeah, and I think that's it. That's the challenge. Because
you don't learn it at uni.
No, and that's the problem at the moment. But we need to, instead of having a go, because that's what we do, and that's what I did as a site manager. If there was a gap in the design and no one would answer it, I'd have a go to solve it myself. That's the wrong approach. To try and be helpful, and we get it everywhere. We get contractors. If you try and be helpful, but you're incompetent,
competently incompetent, or unconsciously incompetent.
But let's nip it in the bud. You can nip it in the bud and say, "Is this a pacifier element?"
Yeah.
Then stop.
Yeah.
Stop and review.
Yeah.
And because we can define pacifier, I think, competence within pacifier.
Yeah.
Which is what you're doing as part of that competency pathway.
Yes, it is a pathway.
So that will help. It's the discussion to have, but it's so. Design is, you start with design, so we really need to tackle that first. And I don't have experience with design. I've only experience with building to design.
Yes.
So that's again why
you're the customer on that basis, aren't you?
So why
you are the customer.
Exactly. So that's why I want to get more involved with these conversations, because I understand that there's difficulties. And one architect said to me the other day, but there's so many products. If we design it with this product, contractor, you're just going to say, we don't like that one. Design it with this one. So is there some scope within the industry to design to some rules, perhaps?
Well, doesn't what you just described completely remove? Because the gateways, you can't start constructing until you've gone through the design, and gateway 2 is that gatekeeper. So by virtue of what you just said and having the gateways in place and the third party schemes being more robust, doesn't that completely get rid of the old sort of regime of spec breaking?
Yes.
Equal and or approved.
Yeah, it's great. So as a principal contractor, we can't do that.
Yeah.
We can't force change and say, we employ you now, architect.
Yeah.
Change it. We want this because we can't afford it.
Yeah.
No, I can't, because otherwise it won't be compliant. Or you can, but then you have to give us some money and we'll have to run a feasibility test and see if it complies.
Or go and test something physically in a furnace, because that design has never been done before.
If that's what it needs. And that's where
I can hear the test houses rubbing their hands together.
So we talk about early engagement, don't we?
Yeah.
So get the principal contractor and the designers and the principal designer in the room early.
And I think that is, you talk about that. I mean, I experienced that. I did a project at RF Valley. It was the new hangar for the Hawk jets. Half of it was storage, half of it was service, and therefore the fire strategies of the service bays compared to the storage were completely different because they bore different risks. And it was interesting, but I remember I got invited to go up, and I was sat in this again, a porter cabin, and everybody was there: principal contractor, principal designer, engineers, all sorts of great and the good. And they were quizzing me on these, technical things about these products and how they were going to be installed, how they were going to work, how they were going to interface with the automated system of the smoke vents opening and all sorts of things happening. And it sort of dawned on me as the conversation went on that everyone sat there had already got an order and was already operating to a contract, and I was the only one that wasn't. So in the end, I sort of went, "Have you got an order?" The contractor went, "Yeah, I've been on this job about 4 months." And I said to the M&E engineer guy, I said, "You got an order?" He went, "Yeah." So I've got an order. I said, "So I've been asked, why haven't I got an order?" "Oh, well, you need to do all the drawings, and then you give us the drawings, and then we'll give you an order." So I sort of said, "Well, I'll tell you what, you give me an order, and then I'll spend all the time and effort on doing the drawings.
Yeah.
And then I'll send them to you because I've now got an order and you're going to pay me for them."
Yep.
And I think this goes back to what you're saying about the whole gateway to not being able to break specs and early engagement. I think especially the real specialist subcontractors. I'm not taking anything away from anybody, but passive fire is sort of seen as a bit of a dark art. Some of the other M&E stuff is seen as a bit of a dark art. Where you're talking about those types of things, where there's a deemed perception of expertise from the provider that are being procured on that project.
Yeah.
They should be considered in the same light as any other profession.
Yes.
And engaged with accordingly.
Yes. It does it does make me chuckle that some of these designs are highly complex designs, and we get that design through from the specialist contractor, and then we send it for approval, and you think, what are they approving?
Yeah.
Because no one knows more about that system than the specialist designer.
Yes.
I guess what they need to just be aware that it fits the rest of their design, that they can't see any issues with it. But they're not approving it. You say, you can't then say to the M&E consultant, and I might be wrong here, that you then take on that design. I think the liability has to stay with that specialist designer.
Yeah.
They need to underwrite that design, but everybody else that contributes needs to make sure that it all works together. It doesn't not fit in isolation.
Yeah. It needs to fit in collaboration effectively.
And I don't think that's too difficult. One thing again might be controversial, and
we like controversial, Chris here.
Is the M&E design too late? I hear that.
Yeah.
And if so, why? Why can't that be brought in?
Hasn't BIM positively impacted that scenario?
Got to, hasn't it?
Because using these sort of three-dimensional electronic designs, where the design gradually evolves over a period of time, and you can sort of dig into the Revit files and look at the spec and all that sort of stuff, that must have improved it. But no, I think I agree with you that if what you're saying is that actually the M&E and the fire stuff, whether that's active or passive, because it's called fit out, and fit out generally comes later on.
Yeah.
Is it dealt with? Because that's the problem, isn't it? Is buildings can suffer from being from concept to handover. It's a linear process, where actually a lot of it should operate parallel.
Yes. How do you complete REBA Stage 3, the spatial coordination, if you haven't modelled the M&E?
Well, big blank bits that are coloured in saying M&E here, or fire, passive fire, or active fire here.
And we just go, I hope it fits.
Yeah.
Even though the compliance of fire stopping services relies heavily on spaces.
Yeah.
And whether it works.
Not just the spacing between penetrations that are compliant to any particular test that's been done, but the spacings have been able to get in there and fit it in the first place.
And then the poor person that needs to access it to maintain it, if you've got, for example, a damper that's buried in the...
Because I have checked, unfortunately, actually I don't mean it that way. Fortunately, you can no longer employ 8-year-old boys to go into small spaces like they did in the Victorian times to sweep chimneys. There are significant laws that prohibit that, and rightly so. So you can't employ an 8-year-old boy to go into a very small space with a mastic gun. And it's not allowed.
And as a principal contractor, I would take that argument, that example, to say, this is why we need to design it in parallel before we start building, because if we don't, we might need to nick an 8-year-old boy, and
you can't do that,
and close our eyes and say,
it's not a place that Skanska want to go, I can assure you. So it's I mean, and that is a lot of our a lot of the members of the ASFP are the specialist subbies, the fire stoppers. A large part of their work now is this early engagement.
Yeah.
It's about, now I know, there's this whole procurement thing that, it's got to be equal or approved and you've got to have choice and everything else. and I appreciate that when procuring products and services, you have to make sure you're getting best value in that sense. But of course, that does have a negative knock-on effect, is that you're entering that early engagement conversation later because you've already gone through a whittle it down from 4 suitors to 2 to 1 through the procurement process. But actually, doesn't the gateway 2 thing get rid of that? Because whoever has been specified within the process of design between 1 and 2, before you go into 3, if that's specified that it's that product or that service provider, they stay, don't they? So you don't have a procurement process per se.
I don't know. I don't know if we need.
I can't believe we're coming up with so. I mean, there's another podcast in amongst all this somewhere. We need,
Yeah. Do we need these specialist contractors that are doing brilliant work in helping design are usually the ones that can install as well? Do we need to divorce that so we can have competition for the install? Or
as long as you pay the person that does.
Oh
the
no,
design.
Absolutely, yes.
I never used to do designs for free, Chris.
Well,
I'm gonna sit hugely on my rock of.
And that's what I mean by divorcing it, because it would be unfair to get an install company to do the design and they say, do you know what?
Thanks for your designs. We'll give them to somebody who's 20% cheaper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, do the install contractor, the installer who can provide some design or some compatibility checks and insurance, can they package that in a way so that can be a product, and then we go out to tender for the installation? It's one for discussion. I would quite like that you keep them because they know the design inside out, and that they're going to understand their own drawings and measures. It's going to be better. I don't know. But yeah, when you're making a choice so early on, okay, challenges from procurers, please, and anybody else. But these are the conversations that we need to have,
or get the specialists in earlier.
Yes.
I mean, and just going back to that thing about PFKG being important, because actually what it does is it gives the opportunity for principal contractors to look in the mirror. Because it's so easy to look out the window. It's so easy to look out at everybody else and say, well, it's you. But actually looking in the mirror and going, do you know what? We have to take responsibility for this.
Yeah. No, I think there's been a lot of work setting up these communication links and these working groups. And I really think that is going to help. We're going to start seeing results of that.
Yeah, it has to. And the thing is, I was in a conversation the other week, and I was asked about some of the stuff that the hairs I've set running while I've been at the ASFP. And the sad reality for me is that quite a few of those I actually won't see in my professional lifetime. I won't see come to sort of total fruition, because of course some of the lead times in developing these things does take quite a significant amount of time. That said, I'm getting quite pushy at the moment. Populate more stuff in the competency framework, develop and release new training courses, update and release new versions of the existing colour books, publish first drafts of the new colour books.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, time's against me, but time's against me. So
we do similar with our processes and procedures within fire, because that's what I can control and I can write. And my line manager Gary says, publish it, and then you get the feedback.
Yes.
And that will speed up the process.
Yes.
Let people see it, test it, use it.
Stop talking about it. Actually produce something tangible, touch, feel, smell, and then it will evolve from the fact that it's in its first inception. Yeah. If you're just constantly sending emails around with bullet points of things you'd like to do, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. Let the
tangible value-adding output.
Yeah.
And tangible is touch, feel, smell.
Yeah. Let the user, the reader, feedback.
Yeah.
Prompt these prompt these discussions. And
Revolution
then
is
we can
great,
improve.
but the problem with revolutions is they soon peter out. Evolution is what it's all about.
Mm.
And if you want an example of that, look at the Galapagos Islands. Each one is evolved at a different time.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I think it was a series called Galapagos, wasn't it? And it showed that the first Galapagos Island is very different from an ecological point of view to the last Galapagos Island. Anyway, sorry. You do like to go off on massive tangents. So let's just kick back into this. So just circling back, Chris, to the original question, which I think was what does competency truly mean in our industry? I'm not sure if we've actually given the answer, because I'm not sure if we know what the answer is.
I'm happy with my answer,
Which was
skills, knowledge, experience, behaviours, but the role and the task needs to be defined, so you can then evidence how you meet that. But that evidence of how you meet it needs to be measured and assessed.
you get what you measure, Chris. You get what you measure. If you don't measure it, you don't get anything. Somebody who supported me when I was younger, he was an FD, very grumpy FD, but took me under his wing. That saying stuck with me. You get what you measure. As in, if you don't measure anything, you get nothing at all. And I think you're right. I think that definition of in terms of from your perspective and what you're looking for as the principal contractor is pretty right.
Mm.
Yeah.
The person that needs to demonstrate competence, they need to understand what they're doing and why they're doing it.
Mm. Well, it goes back to President Kennedy walking through NASA and said hello to the guy sweeping up with the broom. And he said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "I'm putting a man on the moon, Mr. President."
There you go.
You need to know why you're there.
Yeah.
Whether he was competent with that broom or not, Chris, I have no idea. It was a long time ago. Thanks for coming in. I think we've covered everything. Are you
I
happy
think
we've
so.
covered everything?
Yeah, I've probably digressed again and waffled, but
No. You see, waffles, apart from being a breakfast food, actually are little gems, because they going off into places that we don't necessarily think about when we have a chat on the old ASFP sofa, takes us into places that actually sparks interest, excuse the pun, because that's what we're doing today, with people, because they'll suddenly think, well, yeah, do you know what? Yeah, I never thought of it that way. Or, oh, yeah, do you know, I agree with them. Or in some cases, thanks for the emails, they disagree and go, well, you're wrong. We never know, wherever we go in this fantastic little these little conversations we have in Sparking Interests, they have value somewhere. So I never worry about meandering off here, there and everywhere.
yeah, good.
So, it's perfect. Chris, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks for being as candid as you can. I know people will appreciate somebody from the world of principal contractor coming in to talk to us, because it shines a bit of a light on how you think, they think, as a sector. I'll thank you for the work you do with Pacify Knowledge Group, because that is a really important part of improving the engagement through principal contractor, principal designer, and the wider construction industry. And I know obviously our lovely Joe's decided to retire, but we will continue to support PFKG for as long as you want us to support you and add value, because it was an interesting thing how PFKG came about, and the smart ones recognised the value in it. And long may that continue. So we look forward to, of course, the door is always open for you, Chris, here anytime. You can come back again at some point and talk about where you've got to, where Skanska have got to, and there's certainly things coming out from government, MHCLG and other places that I'm sure will generate discussion and comment as we navigate our way through what will eventually become a much better construction industry.
Yeah. I'd like to take the opportunity, because you mentioned the Pacify Knowledge Group, is for people to go and have a look at the LinkedIn page
Mm.
and go and have a look at the website and get involved and comment on some of the knowledge shares, because it's the industry and their challenges
Yes.
that feed the discussion that produce the knowledge shares.
Yes.
So
knowledge share in some cases quite often is what not to do, as opposed to what to do.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people miss that point, is that the people think that training or education or knowledge, everything should be on a positive basis. But actually, Passive Fire Knowledge Group and the people involved in it have been brave enough to say, we've discovered these issues and these challenges, and we're publishing them so that you don't make that mistake.
And sometimes we might not have the solution.
No.
But we need to, go and find it.
And the answer is, we don't have a solution. There is no solution to this. Just don't do it.
Exactly, yeah.
And that will save somebody a world of pain later on, and they can thank you with chocolates, flowers, and anything else they want to send you. So, yeah, knowledge shares are good. Knowledge shares are good. I mean, in terms of resolution, I know the group looks for resolution. It just comes through different avenues that are indemnified to then put out what you should do in certain cases, because I know we've done a couple of advisory notes, and that comes from a different place. But the knowledge shares themselves are great, because actually what they do is highlight an issue, a challenge, or something that people should be aware of that has come from real world experience.
Yeah.
And that's brilliant, because we're all living experiences. We're getting into the types of worlds that young people use. I'm not sure if we're allowed to do that, Chris. So thanks again, Chris. Great to see you. You're always welcome back on the little red sofa, and we'll pick up. Let's see what the landscape looks like in a year's time. Thank you,
Brilliant.
Chris.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.